The holidays are here, and that means that the comic book budget may take a hit to fill up the space underneath the Christmas tree. So let's take a look at 10 comics you can pick up on a $100 budget as we approach the winter of 2023. Kicking off the list in the number 10 spot is a fix for your late 90s nostalgia, Dragon Ball Z #1. Published by Viz in March 1998, Dragon Ball Z #1 is the first US comic book appearance of Dragon Ball Z. Goku and Dragon Ball Z originally appeared 13 years prior in December 1984's Weekly Shonen Jump, issue 838. That's a book you're definitely not going to be able to pick up on a $100 budget. Dragon Ball Z #1 went through at least 12 printings, but right now we're going to focus on the first print. And patience may be the key in snagging this one on that $100 budget, but it can be done. If you need a copy of this book in your collection immediately, you're probably going to have to lean in and stretch that $100 just a little bit. I do have to admit that the DBZ craze missed me, but I know a lot of people who are just a few years behind me who just can't get enough of it. We've had an Incredible Hulk, a Smart Hulk, a She-Hulk, and soon we're probably going to have a Red Hulk in the MCU. So let's dive into that with the number 9 book, Hulk #1. Published in March 2008, Hulk 1 caught your eye when you walked into the LCS that week. When you think of the Hulk, you think of green first and probably gray second. There really wasn't a third color that came to mind, but all of a sudden, here was a red Hulk on the cover of this new series. If you thought you could just buy the issue and figure out what was going on, unfortunately, you were wrong, as the Red Hulk was nowhere to be found inside the issue, but instead would make his first in-story appearance in the following issue. Despite only appearing on the cover, the market currently favors Hulk #1 over Hulk #2. A high-grade copy of Hulk 2 can be picked up for around $20 right now, while Hulk #1 keeps slowly creeping higher and higher. Currently selling for north of $75 for high-grade raw copies, the fact that Marvel has recast General Ross with none other than Harrison Ford has really helped drive interest in the Red Hulk in that classic MCU spec fashion. Sometimes comics are weird, and maybe that's obvious, but I feel like I needed to throw that out there in order to prepare you for our number 8 book, Tank Girl #1. Published in May 1991 by Dark Horse Comics, Tank Girl was another character that was imported from across the pond. Tank Girl #1 was the character's first US comic book appearance, as Tank Girl first appeared in October 1988's Deadline magazine #1, which was a magazine that was put out over in the UK. Tank Girl #1 is full of reprints of the character's earlier British adventures, but the issue's cover, which was drawn by Jamie Hewlett, is really the star of the show. Having gained the status of a modern iconic cover, the 90s weirdness oozes off of this thing. Tank Girl was adapted for a 1995 film starring Lori Petty, and with the way comic book properties are being made and remade today, this IP is really almost kooky enough that somebody might pick it up sooner or later and give it another go. Currently selling for upwards of $100 for complete high-grade copies. Be sure to check inside for the Dark Horse trading card insert. If that's missing, you've got yourself an incomplete copy of this display-worthy Dark Horse classic. The hobby loves the symbiote. Carnage, Null, Venom, you name it. Generally speaking, wherever there is a new symbiote, there is a bump in value. Such is the case for the number 7 book on our list, The Amazing Spider-Man 569, the first cameo appearance of Anti-Venom. Long story short, Mr. Negative did something to Eddie Brock back in ASM 568 to help cure Eddie's cancer. As luck would have it, when you separate from a symbiote, it might kind of leave traces behind, and when those traces are exposed to some Mr. Negative stuff and then fused with your white blood cells, you get this cool-looking hybrid symbiote thing. ASM 569 is a cameo appearance, but much like we talked about with Hulk #1, the market has chosen Amazing Spider-Man 569 over Anti-Venom's first full appearance, which comes in ASM 570. Currently, prices are a bit hard to pin down on this issue. High-grade copies have sold for as much as $75 in the last month, and there's even been some sales at or below the $50 mark. While we're specifically talking about the A cover here, There is also a great Audie Grenov variant cover, as well as a second printing of this issue, which is the first cover appearance of Anti-Venom, and it's also a pretty tough to find and sought out issue of Amazing Spider-Man, but that second printing is going to set you back a lot more than our $100 budget. Speeding into the number 6 spot is Sonic the Hedgehog number 13, the first appearance of Knuckles the Echidna. Published in August 1994 by Archie Comics, this issue features a Dave Manek cover. Manek, who also pencils the Mike Katerovich story, The Island Hedgehog, where Dr. Robotnik manipulates Sonic and Tails into fighting Knuckles so that he can steal Knuckles Island's Chaos Emerald. In February 2022, it was announced that not only was a Sonic 3 film in the works from Paramount, but additionally a Knuckles spin-off series slated for Paramount Plus, which would also star Idris Elba, was announced for sometime in 2023. Following this announcement and the character's big screen debut in Sonic 2, prices for Sonic the Hedgehog 13 have seen a bit of a boost lately. Higher grade copies are difficult to find, as is the case for most kids' comics, and they're currently going for around $75 to $100 when you can manage to find one, while mid-grade copies can often be found at or below the $50 mark. Dropping into the number 5 spot is Marvel Team Up number 95. Bobby Morse is a character we've talked about on more than one occasion on the channel, but surprisingly, this is the first time I've actually talked about this particular book. In Marvel Team Up 95, Morse, who we know first appeared in the June 1971 issue of Astonishing Tales number 6, finally finds the alter ego that would stick: Mockingbird. If you caught the Hawkeye Disney Plus show last year, then you know that it was revealed that Hawkeye's wife, Laura, was S.H.I.E.L.D. Agent 19, which is another alias for Mockingbird. And if that caught you off guard, it's actually comic book canon for Hawkeye and Mockingbird to be married, so she was kind of hiding in plain sight all this time in the MCU. Marvel Team Up 95 has been surprisingly stable value-wise. High-grade raw copies have been selling for between $75 and $100 for a few years at this point, which is surprising in the current market. If condition isn't something you get too hung up on, VF range copies are selling regularly for about $50 or maybe even a little less if you get lucky. I do think that what we may be seeing here is a book of some significance that's fairly easy to track down, that's sitting at a reasonable price point, which is why Marvel Team Up 95 has been able to maintain its value in the current market, where so many other books are just getting crushed. One of my favorite things about these top 10 lists is following books as their values change. Our number 4 book is one that I've talked about before, but that was back in a $50 budget video, and here we are less than a year later talking about it once again on the $100 budget video. Coming in at number 4 is Spectre number 54. Published in June 1997, Spectre 54 has been enjoying a nice bump in value and demand as well, following a random Instagram post from James Gunn, which featured Mr. Terrific, who makes his first appearance in this issue. Well, more specifically, the second Mr. Terrific, Michael Holt, debuts in Spectre 54. In case you haven't heard, James Gunn has accepted a deal to take charge of DC Studios' upcoming projects. If his history with the Guardians of the Galaxy and the MCU has taught us anything, it's that Gunn loves to drop hints along the way to fuel excitement. Following Gunn's post, high-grade copies of Spectre 54 have been selling in that $80 to $100 range lately. After holding the line for around $50 for a good long while, the recent jump may prove to be short-lived, especially if Mr. Terrific doesn't make it into the early stages of Gunn's new master plan for DC, so be a little cautious with this one. Sticking the superhero landing in the number 3 spot is all new Marvel Now .1 number 1. Say that 3 times fast. Published in March 2014, all new Marvel Now .1 number 1 was actually a primer issue that featured 6 different stories that introduced readers to the latest versions of several new characters that were being featured in the all new Marvel Now relaunch back in 2014. Most notable of this new wave of characters was Kamala Khan as the all-new Miss Marvel. While the character had previously had a couple of cameo appearances and had even made a full cover appearance on the second printing of Captain Marvel 17, All New Marvel Now .1, number 1, is the first time we see Kamala in story as Miss Marvel. In addition to that, we also meet her guy in the chair, Bruno, for the first time in this issue. This book has actually taken a pretty steep drop in value from its 2020 and 2021 highs, with CGC 9.8 selling for less than half of their 2021 average over the last 90 days. What this decline in value means is that this book is once again attainable for the collector that has to stick to that $100 max budget for a single book. You should be able to pick up a nice raw copy of this one for 75 to 80 bucks right now, but with a little luck, you may even be able to grab a 9.4 or a 9.6 slabbed copy for right at the $100 mark. There have been some really interesting sales lately, to say the least. Laughing all the way to the runner-up position is the award-winning Batman Harley Quinn #1. This is the first appearance of Harley Quinn in the primary DC Comics continuity. Published in August 1999, it's pretty hard to believe that it took DC almost 6 years to integrate Harley Quinn into the prime DC storyline after the character broke out in the Batman the Animated Series universe, and specifically from her first appearance in Batman Adventures 12, which was back in September 1993. Rocking an excellent Alex Ross cover, the book won an Eagle Award in 1999 in the Favorite Cover of the Year category. This is a prestige format book with a 48-page story from writer Paul Dini and penciler Yvel Gachet. There are also second and third printings of this one out there, and to the best of my knowledge, they're indistinguishable from the first print when you're just looking at the cover, so be sure to flip it open and check the indicia if you're in the market for one of these. Nobody wants to pay the first print price for a second or third printing. Recently, sales for higher grade raw copies of Harley Quinn #1 have been ranging in that $75 to $100 range, which is just right for our $100 budget. Topping the winter 2023 top 10 comics on a $100 budget list is a book that's cooled off more than the temperatures outside, Uncanny X-Men 221. Published in September 1987, Uncanny X-Men 221 features the introduction of the most sinister X-Men villain there is, Mr. Sinister. After going for quite a ride in late 2020 and most of 2021, the bottom has simply fallen out of this one. At the peak of the market, raw copies were selling for $200 to $250, and back in May of 2021, a 9.8 copy peaked at $929 for a direct edition copy. Currently, CGC 9.8 copies are down 25% on average over the last 90 days when compared to their 2021 average, which doesn't really sound all that bad when you look at the market as a whole, with some books correcting far more than just 25%. But over on the raw side of the coin, things are a lot uglier. Truly high-grade copies are now selling only in the $75 to $90 range, but when you drop down to the VF grade range, copies are going for as little as $50 or less. It's pretty clear that X-Men 221 was way out over its skis back in 2021, like so many other books were, and especially some of these X-Men books. That said, I think this is a great second chance for X-Men collectors or collectors in general to check this box at a reasonable price, especially if you were priced out when this issue spiked during the bubble. So many X-Men villains have been adapted just over and over for various Fox movies and different projects, which really makes the appeal of Mr. Sinister just that much sweeter when it comes to looking for the right baddie for the X-Men to face off when they get into the MCU. Right now, things are still kind of crazy. The market is still searching for the bottom as prices continue to slip in a lot of areas of the hobby. There are several places where pricing is not only stable, but actually increasing. Pre-Code Horror and Golden Age comics particularly are outperforming the rest of the market, while Silver and Bronze Age books have taken a hit. Copper and modern spec books have really taken the brunt of the losses. While that's unfortunate if you've been stacking copper or modern spec books, it's also making for great opportunities for collectors to pick up books at prices they haven't seen in 2 years or more. Obviously, the economy's not in the best position right now, and as such, collectors who would like to be taking advantage of these new lower prices simply aren't in a position to dive in like they were able to just a few months ago. If you're still actively buying in today's market, it feels like a great time to pivot to quality over quantity. Prices on keys, and I mean big keys, are falling back within reach of everyday collectors, and concentrating your comic budget into a few higher tier books as the market is still actively searching for that basement bottom level could prove to be quite beneficial once the market rebounds on the other side of this economic downturn. Happy hunting out there, and collect responsibly. I'll see you in the next video.